So if you've finished your drinks, if you'd like to come and sit down again, and if anyone has anything they would like to discuss, are there any questions? If anyone didn't hear, the question was if we have broken precepts in the past, what should we do about it? How can we correct that? There are a number of occasions in a number of places in the suttas, in the discourses of the Buddha, where monks, lay people have acted in inappropriate ways and then confessed to the Buddha, and the Buddha praises them for that and says this is the way to progress in the Dhamma. And what's meant by confession here is perhaps not the same as in certain other traditions. It's not, the idea is there a confessor or one who provides absolution. The actual word that we would use in the monastic tradition is revealing of offence. So the Buddha says that if we break precept, then first of all there has to be that honesty and recognition that the precept has been broken, and secondly that it should not be concealed, it should be revealed, and thirdly that one should make a firm resolution not to break that precept again in future. So this is the purification. One, the recognition, the acceptance that the precept has been broken. Secondly, the revealing of the precept, the non-concealment. And thirdly, and probably most crucially, the firm volition not to break the precept again. That second point of non-concealment means that one would reveal the transgression to one's spiritual teacher or to a good friend, or kalyana mitta, someone that one trusts. And in fact it can be a very good spiritual practice if you have one particular friend, it could be a partner or some other friend who is on the same path and you feel close to and you trust, and make an agreement that if either of you should transgress a precept, that you'll reveal it to the other person. So sometimes monks will do this, and they'll meet every evening before they go back to their kutis, and if either of them has transgressed one of the precepts or one of the training rules, minor training rules, they'll reveal it to their friend. And so this is a sense of daily purification. Sometimes if one's living by oneself or one doesn't have that kind of contact with a good friend, then psychologically a similar benefit can be obtained from bowing to a Buddha image and just revealing, speaking and saying something to the Buddha image. And so this will depend, of course, on what your feelings towards Buddha images are. But if you're able to use a Buddha image in that way, if you have that sense of reverence and uplift from paying respects to Buddha image, then this is one possibility. The Buddha said that the famous, well-known verse in the Dhammapada. He says, one who has been heedless in the past and becomes heedful, one who gives up some inappropriate, unwholesome action, illumines the world like the full moon emerging from a cloud. So there is this sense that there's nothing sort of fixed. There's not such thing as a bad person or someone sort of condemned to be a bad person forever because of something they've done, or similarly that one is a good person forever because of good things one's done. But this state of goodness, purity or impurity is conditioned, is contingent, and until one's reached the fixed level of attainment, one of the four states of enlightenment, then one has to constantly guard and protect the goodness in one's heart and find ways of increasing it and maximizing it. And similarly with the unwholesome qualities, there's nothing that's fixed there. There's something that whatever is present exists in accordance with causes and conditions, and we have the intelligence to be able to determine those causes and conditions and gradually undermine them and eventually eliminate them. Yeah. Any more questions about anything at all? You'd have to be Gring Jai. How can you develop patience? It's one of those, you develop patience by being patient, basically. It's not really more profound than that. But with any question of, how do I abandon this particular bad habit, bad quality, how to develop this particular good quality, then the basic reflection is always on what we say pros and cons, or in Thai say kun and tod, and the advantages and disadvantages. This is the way that you really strengthen your determination. So if you constantly reflect on the value of patience, reflect on the examples of patient people that you find inspiring, you recollect occasions in the past where you have been patient and the good results that came from that. At the same time, on the other side, you reflect on the suffering that comes through lack of patience, difficulties, the obstructions to practice and realization of spiritual goals. So you reflect on those two sides, the value of patience and the disadvantages, drawbacks, suffering inherent in lack of patience, and then you just do it. I think talking about patience, and there's one of the ways of talking about it or articulating it is to refer to peaceful coexistence with unpleasant things. Sometimes they say, be patient, but if you say, well, just peacefully coexist with something that you don't like, it's a different mindset, isn't it? So, with the physical discomfort, you're saying, if you don't look on physical discomfort as some kind of oppression or enemy, but you can develop a sense of friendship with discomfort, and just to be present to it. Let's say you've got a close family relation, whose behaviour is really obnoxious, but he's a member of your family, he's brother, sister, son, nephew, niece, or whatever, and you're just willing, even though you probably wouldn't choose to spend your time with them. Well, you can do it, for the sake of your family or for and so on. finding those kinds of analogies where you say, yes, I can do that. There's so many things that you have to be able to bear with things, be present to things for a long period of time before you can fully see them in their complexity. So if you are still in that mode of pushing away the unpleasant or grasping onto the present, then you're not able to do that correctly. Anybody at the back? Anything you'd like to say? Yes, you can be the representative. Adhitthana, resolution. I think it's important that one uses one's wisdom faculty with this. And analogy I would give is like say with sport. Okay, play tennis. Okay, if you play tennis with someone who's much better than you, it's miserable. You lose 6-0, 6-0, 6-0. It's miserable. But if you play with someone who's much inferior to you and you win 6-0, 6-0, it's not much fun either. But I think with tennis or with any kind of sport, the best experience if you play with someone who's just a bit better than you. Because you find yourself playing better than you thought you could play. There's just something in playing someone who's just a bit superior to you that just somehow draws out the best in you, doesn't it? And I think that when one makes one particular resolutions or determinations, if you make a determination that's too idealistic, and then you can't do it, and you just feel miserable, and you have a lot of sort of self-aversion, and I'm hopeless, and so on. But if you make it too easy, then you don't get any of the benefits, the sense of accomplishment and confidence, and so on. So you want to be able to set yourself some kind of goal and make yourself some kind of resolution, which is challenging, but just to that level which it pulls out or draws out the best in you. So I think the real skill is on deciding just on what level to make that resolution, and having that sense of realistic assessment of your own abilities and strength. Because if you set the level too high and then you can't do it, then it's worse than not making a resolution in the first place. The example my teacher gave, he said, if you are planning to row a boat across a swiftly flowing river, he said, you don't aim straight across the river. You always aim upstream, because you allow for the strength of the current to bring you down. So if you want to go straight across, you always try just a little bit above, where you really want to be, because you understand the sort of power of defilement. Someone's going to sort of drag you down a little bit. So. Well, there are many different kinds of physical pain, aren't there? And there are different. The response to it will vary accordingly. Certainly, it's not always the wisest thing to do to be patient with physical pain. Sometimes physical pain is telling you should do something about this. So not advocating this kind of just bearing with it under all circumstances. indeed, even in the realm of meditation, I would say that one of the important things is that you enjoy meditating. That if you don't, and if you feel that every time you meditate you're going to have to sit through physical pain, and it's miserable, before very long you'll find really good reasons for not meditating, and you'll stop. So, middle way is, not to give up or to get up and stop meditating when you feel physical pain, because certainly the understanding of physical pain is one of the goals of meditation practice. At the same time, I think if you're meditating sometimes and it starts to get painful, just change your posture. If you're feeling quite peaceful and the meditation's going well, it doesn't mean that you should always have to be working with physical pain in meditation. It should be something you don't shy away from, and you should do every now and again, but not necessarily every time. And with physical pain in general, assuming that it's not sort of life-threatening or something that definitely needs attention of a doctor, it's just, you're looking at physical pain, and as I say, what you're wanting to see most clearly is the separation of the physical sensation and emotional reaction to it. Of course, we know if you're sitting on the floor for 2 or 3 hours meditating, then you tend to feel more pain than if you were sitting on the floor 2 or 3 hours watching a really absorbing movie, even though it's the same body, because your mind is so absorbed in the story and the emotions of the movie. So this is very obvious demonstration of the role of the mind in experience of physical pain. But the ability to be with the pain is enhanced by looking particularly at the impermanence of pain. There are three aspects. The first is the location of the pain. If we don't look at pain, then it tends to feel it's just kind of in one general area. My knee hurts, or this hurts, or that hurts. But if you look very closely, you'll notice that the pain is moving around, that it doesn't just stay in one particular place. Secondly, the characteristics of the pain are not stable. You get different kinds of pain: shooting pain, burning pain, aches, and so on. And noticing, observing the difference in the characteristics of the pain is the second aspect. Third is the intensity of the pain. On a scale to 10, it doesn't just stay at one; it tends to come in waves. So, looking at the location, the characteristic, the intensity of the pain means that the mind has skillful work to do. And the nature of the mind is that at any one moment it's either wholesome or unwholesome. So if you give the mind wholesome work to do, which means investigation with mindfulness, then it's impossible for the mind to be in an unwholesome state at that moment of investigation. So although the physical pain, the physical side of the pain will remain, the mental, emotional side of the pain will be absent, because it can't exert itself while the mind is investigating with mindfulness. So in meditation we have a number of different strategies or choices. For those people who have strong meditation and who can withdraw the mind from the physical body altogether, that's one strategy. And many of the great meditation masters at the end of their life, where they're suffering from some chronic illness, will often spend many hours of the day just in a state of meditation in which they're not conscious of their physical body. It's a rest from the physical body. That, of course, is not an option open to many people. But the second option, as I say, is in the case of someone meditating on the breath, is just to leave the breath for a certain while and to take on the pain as an object in itself and investigate in the way I mentioned just now. If the pain becomes too much, then change your posture. Okay. Yes, sorry. Yes. This is another skillful means that if through practicing metta, loving kindness meditation, which is usually practiced by developing sorts of loving kindness, warmth, well-being for oneself, and then to member of the same sex who one looks up to and respects, could be one's spiritual teacher, for instance, and then to someone, close family member, and then an indifferent person, and then finally, if the mind's strong enough, to someone one's angry with or feels is an enemy. Through this kind of practice, one develops what we call like metta nimitta, or a sense of loving kindness. Usually it is felt in the chest area. But this general sense of warmth and kindness, which one can then bring to mind and raise up into consciousness more or less at will. Now, once that ability has been developed, you can project that feeling onto pain, for instance. You can use the breathing as the vehicle for that. So the tendency when you're in pain, of course, is that the breath becomes shorter. But deliberately breathing quite long breaths and like breathing in and out through that area of pain, with just this sense of kindness and gentleness and acceptance. Being a friend with the pain, as I said just now, but it's also that sense of projecting that sense of kindness and love onto that area. So, although this is not a traditional technique that you would find in the suttas, it's certainly something that works, and there is an encouragement to not to worry too much about what it says in the books, but find out from experience what does work. And you can be quite creative in meditation. Sometimes people worry, I'm doing this and it doesn't, I've never heard anyone teach it, and it's not in any of the books I've read, is it all right? And they say, well, does it work or not? If it works, it's all right. So it's just something that you can be, as I say, quite creative with, finding skillful means to deal with particular problems. But why this metta is, loving kindness is particularly effective in the case of pain is because what we call pain is almost always a compound of the sensation itself and aversion of one kind or another, or an anxiety and fear. So when the mind is imbued with the sense of loving kindness, it's impossible for this aversion and anger and so on to be present, because you can't have these two things present at the same time. Anything else? Anybody? Yes. I'm sorry, I can't hear.
For many people, sitting, formal sitting meditation is quite difficult. And I found that the active meditation, just to be with, when you do something, just be with it, was very helpful. That you can take whatever moment you have in a day, whatever you do, just take a few minutes, practice, being aware. It's very helpful and maybe not as difficult to do when you sit at the beginning.
Yes, I think so. In fact, in the forest tradition in the northeast of Thailand, where I was trained, there's quite a big emphasis on walking meditation. Monks will do as many 5-6 hours a day walking meditation, even more sometimes. And walking meditation, particularly attractive if you have physical difficulties sitting, but also it's very good late at night. If maybe sitting you'd be sleepy and find it very difficult for that reason. It also, through developing the walking meditation, you give yourself the ability to be able to realistically meditate for many hours at a stretch. Whereas if someone who only sits, even if you can sit quite comfortably for an hour or so, few people can sit more than a couple of hours at a stretch. But if you're walking, then you can do an hour sitting, an hour walking, or half an hour sitting, half an hour walking, or even 20 minutes, 20 minutes. So, and these two, they do dovetail and they do complement each other very well. The particular value of walking meditation, for instance, is that it is certainly the walking meditation that we do in the forest monasteries, we're walking at a more or less normal pace, means that one's feeling is not so different from that just walking around normally. And so if you do become competent at this kind of meditation, it is much more easy to transfer into one's daily life and adapt into one's daily life than the kind of meditation experiences that one can have while sitting. So this is one of the reasons why it's stressed so much. And then in forest monasteries also the monks do quite a lot of sweeping and cleaning and sort of basic physical labor, which doesn't require you to do a lot of thinking, but have to be really in your body and grounded in the present moment. So the ability to maintain that kind of awareness for, as you say, periods of the day is very good. But to really go deep into the mind, you do have to have those times of just stillness and seclusion from daily activities, because there are certain kind of deeper, more profound levels of mind that really do need that kind of stillness. Somebody just going to finish. Yes.
I have a... That's very loud.
Yeah.
I've only recently learned about some research that His Holiness the Dalai Lama has been doing with the University of Wisconsin researchers to look at the brain activity of monks that are trained in meditation and college-age students who were given a brief course in meditation. I'm just wondering if you could comment on that research, if you're familiar with it, or just discuss what you think about this effort to use empirical research to document the benefits of meditation.
Yeah, I do have a certain amount of knowledge of what's going on. I think some of the pertinent points that I've heard made are one that previously most research done on meditation and so on was done on students who volunteered, with no recognition that the ability of a student to concentrate on an object is going to be vastly different from someone who's been doing it for years. So a lot of the experimental data that was produced was distorted through that, and the value of meditation underestimated. Whereas they found particularly almost impossible to evaluate the nature, the value of positive emotions with ordinary subjects. Whereas there's a French monk called Mathieu Ricard who's done a lot of this work, and hooked up and asked to produce a state of loving kindness in his mind, at will, and then from loving kindness to move on to compassion. And so giving data to these scientists that they've never had before, somebody say, he's in a state of loving kindness, what's happening in his brain? Okay, now he's moving on to compassion, what's happening in his brain? So, they're getting all kinds of data that they've never had before. And, of course, it's a measure of the prestige of science and the belief in the value of empirical data that, people are not willing to believe the Dalai Lama, but they believe figures from the University of Wisconsin. So, and I think that monks are quite happy about that in the sense that, there's this confidence that this does work, and that if you can find a way of explaining how it works in a modern idiom or an idiom that people in a particular society are comfortable with, then great. I think the whole sort of revolution in brain science and this recognition, this whole idea of neuroplasticity, the idea that the brain is not a fixed thing, but the brain changes. If you give someone a particular task to do, like even to play a particular musical instrument over a period of time, then their brain changes as a result of that, and that the way that you look at the world, the way you think about things, what you do with your mind, is not just an epiphenomenon, something that's produced from the brain, but is actually can go the other way and affect the nature of the brain itself. So for so long there's been this materialistic idea that the mind is something that's produced from all the chemicals and connections in the brain, and I think that idea is being very clearly refuted now, not just by monks but by scientists. I was speaking with someone, nurse from hospital in Ubon recently. They were telling me about something that happened in the hospital a few months ago. There was an organ donor died in the hospital. He was brain dead, and there was a call for organ urgently from Bangkok. But this doctor is very scrupulous, and whenever he harvests organs, he stands by the side of the body first and asks permission. And he says, if you have any objection, please let me know. So the brain-dead patient was laying there, and he said, I urgently need your liver or your kidney. If you have any objection, please tell me. And he went like this. So, according to medical science, that shouldn't be possible for a brain-dead person to no, not yet. Yes.
I'll just speak up. The recent earthquake in Pakistan has had me thinking, I'm sure all of us, about quite a few things. And I'm wondering, in a world that is changing as rapidly as ours seems to be changing, with the at least what we perceive or might perceive as the escalation of human tragedy, what remedies through Buddhism and through Sangha do we have to be able to bring more light into the world, not just through our own meditations, but in groups?
Yes. I don't know whether I can give such a satisfactory answer to that, but I think in some ways Buddhism is like a metta religion, not metta as in loving kindness, but metta meaning M-E-T-A, in the sense that in some ways it's a critique of, it gives a very profound critique of other religious systems, in the sense that, as I said at the beginning of the talk, it's not a belief system, and so in Buddhism we're interested in what is belief. What is the value of belief? What are the advantages and the disadvantages of belief? How does belief function in spiritual life? What are its limitations and so on? And so in Buddhism we're saying that there is a difference between believing something and knowing something. Okay, so often in theistic systems, there's this sense that they're one and the same thing. You say, I know this. And you say, what do you mean I know? It's like, well, I believe it. And he says, well, how do you believe it's in the book? You say, it says in my holy book this, and I read this and I knew it was true. You see. So you get this kind of circular reasoning that it's true because I believe it, and I believe it because it's true. See? And the intensity of belief is the proof of the pudding, of the truth of what's believed. And because most of the theistic religions are like this, then there's been this constant conflict between them. Because if I'm right, then you're not right, and so this constant question of, if you're right, how do you relate to the people who are wrong? Should you just leave them be? Should you try to persuade them to be as right as you are? Should you force them to be? What's your moral responsibility if only believing what you believe can you go to heaven, and everybody else has to go to hell? If you know that person's going to go to hell because they don't believe what you want to believe, what's your moral responsibility? Now this is the kind of question that's going to bedeviled the world, and this is something that is increasing these days. There was this idea, at least in sort of more secular Europe, that with modern development, religions would just kind of wither away, and everybody would become more and more secular and reasonable. But it hasn't happened, has it? It's just the opposite's happened, because the instinctive reaction to bewildering change is to find something to believe in. So people take belief as a refuge. Now, in Buddhism, we say, first of all, that are we really sure that the benefits of a sense of security and well-being and something come from what we believe in or the belief itself? Often it's believing in something rather than the thing that we believe in that's providing the benefits. So Buddhism says, first of all, there is a distinction between believing something and knowing something. Knowing something has to be knowing as a direct experience. And if you don't know as a direct experience, then it's being inauthentic and incorrect to claim that you do. And you should be humble and recognize that you don't actually know something. You merely believe it. So in Buddhism we say, for instance, do you believe in rebirth? You say, well, what do you say? Well, yes, you can say, I believe. That's not really the point. Yes, I do believe. I personally do believe in rebirth, and I've got lots of good reasons why I believe it. But I don't have a memory of past lives. I haven't developed that ability. So I always recognize that I have a belief based on certain reasons which I consider well-founded ones, but my belief, no matter how firm it is not knowledge. So I don't know. I don't know whether there's rebirth. I believe, but I don't know. And I think that this, particularly, I would say, characteristically Buddhist insight, is something which could help the world a lot. You know, if Christians were willing to say, I believe that Jesus died on the cross to save all people, but I don't know. I believe it, but I don't know. And if Muslims were to say, I believe that there's only one God, his name's Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet, but I don't know, then I think this is a way that could lead to some basis for world peace, in which everybody comes together as fellow not knowers. We don't know. I'm a Buddhist, but I don't really know. I'm a Christian, I don't know either. And, you know, I'm a Muslim, I don't know either, you know. Well, we all have our beliefs, but, you know, where we all meet together and where we're all friends is in this common sense. We don't really know what we're talking about. And I think this is a kind of realistic way ahead. So in terms of you know, natural disasters and tsunamis and earthquakes and so on, I don't know whether I can offer anything very much. But in terms of the general quality of life together as human beings, and at least in that area in which human beings are contributing to and making things worse than they might be otherwise, I think that Buddhism has some very valuable insights and a lot that it can offer. But I think it's an offering to human beings and human intelligence, and a way of trying to find a way that we can all live together on this planet without, you know, destroying it within the next 50 years, which seems to be increasingly unlikely as things going on.
Would you say that Buddhism supports that it's possible to live in this world today without making judgments? Would you say that Buddhism supports that it's possible when you walk the middle path to be happy and effective in this world today without making judgments, opinions, saying this is good, this is bad, this is right, this is wrong? I don't think Buddhism is would subscribe to this kind of non-judgmental attitude to everything, in the sense that, you know, in Western culture, you know, sort of existentialist idea is that the world is meaningless, so why don't you kill yourself? This is a kamu, you know, why? And so the answer of most of these philosophers was, you create meaning for yourself, and your job as a human being is to create meaning, and therefore no one meaning is superior to any other meaning. It's just everyone's way of sort of getting through this. You know, you create a meaning for yourself. And this is a kind of basis for much of the non-judgmental attitude in modern Western European secular culture. Whereas in Buddhism, we say that there are certain laws of nature, the law of karma in particular. And so it is possible to make a judgment on that level. If you assume that people don't want to suffer and they want to be happy, then if you go around killing other people, hurting other people, then make a judgment there and say that's not a wise way to act. It's not a good way to act. That actions have consequences, both in this life and future lives. So I think the question here is always with judgment. To what do we mean by judgment? It's saying these are my standard I consider greed, hatred, delusion, and actions based on greed, hatred, and delusion as harmful, and the extent to which we can reduce actions based on greed, hatred, and delusion as human beings, and the extent to which we can promote and increase living and acting based on kindness, compassion, non-harming, mutual respect, and so on, is good. So this is my standard of good and bad. So I'm judging on this standard. I think if you're very clear about what your ideals are and what your standard for judgment is, not taking for granted, and saying that this is my standard, maybe, and recognizing other people might have other standards. But I think that there has to be a point where you have to sort of stand your ground sometimes and say, no, I don't find that acceptable, according to my goals, my aspirations, my.
I've been working on positive observations, and the observation isn't an opinion, isn't an evaluation, but it would be, say, observing that there are laws like karma.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be a judgment, though. It would be an observation. Say, if you burn yourself, that's an observation.
Yeah.
And you'd say that maybe belief is lack of certain knowledge. That's why you call it belief.
Yeah.
If it was certain knowledge, then that's what it would be, not belief.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Yes, but I think that one's observation, is always within a context. There are always things that you have to take for granted, or you have to take as basic axioms, and there are always certain beliefs involved. Even with the law of karma, I don't think that you can certainly prove the law of karma just by looking at the present life, because results of karmic actions don't all come to fruition in the present life, and so many people for that reason don't believe in the law of karma. So I think that you can certainly observe all kinds of phenomena in your own life and other people's lives which would corroborate and strengthen one's conviction that the law of karma is truly exists. But I think that there are also many people who could point to other phenomena and say, well, what about that then? And what about this then? And you'd be hard put to refute it without resorting to this explanation that not all karmic actions come to fruition in this lifetime. So I think the interest in and the commitment to observation is absolutely correct. But I think that there is always going to be a certain role for faith, unless one is an enlightened being and one is has totally known. Because if you haven't reached that level, there is still defilement in the mind. There is still wrong view. There is attachment to sense of self, and so on. And all those things do distort our ability to observe. So we have the intention to observe, but how successful are we in observing? What affects our ability to observe, as opposed to just pick and choose amongst the things that we pick up on? So that's what we're doing in meditation: ability to put down all those kind of filters on experience and those wrong views, and to be able to develop the ability to see more and more clearly, and to be able to observe more and more accurately. But yes, I think that it's, you're on the right track for sure. Well, it's quite late now, so I think probably we can call it an evening. I'll tell you a story before we go. It's a funny story. It's about this monk who had this psychic powers, and when someone died, he could tell in what realm they were being reborn.
And there was a monk who's quite a well-known monk, give a lot of public talks, and he died. And his relations went to see this famous monk and asked him to go into samadhi and tell them whereabouts he'd been reborn. So they said he'd been reborn in the Jaturat Maharaja, sorry I haven't pronounced it properly, it's the lowest heaven realm. Well, okay, at least he's got to heaven, you see. And then while they're still sitting there, relations of this taxi driver come and they ask where he's gone. And he said he's gone to Dusit heaven, which is much higher heaven realm. So all the relations of this monk are kind of noijai. They're kind of, how's that work? Our relation. He's a monk and he's a taxi driver. So they asked the monk. He said, "Well, why is this?" And he says, "Well, it's like this." He said, "This monk used to give a lot of talks, but really boring talks." He said, "Quite frankly, most of the people used to fall asleep while he was talking, so didn't actually give rise to that much benefit, all the talks he gave." So he's got in the lowest. Whereas this taxi driver, he says, he used to drive so fast and so carelessly that all his passengers used to reflect on death and the fragility of life and actually really questioning their whole existence every time they were in the back of his cab. So he made so much merit that he's gone to the Dusit level of heaven. So this is, I think this is somewhat apocryphal, this story, but anyway.
Is that a true story?
It's called an apocryphal story. Yes. Okay, well, thank you for being so patient and listening this evening. And,
Bob and I've done 3 times again.